Hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop, and this video is Workshop Blether number 14. So not done a blether for a little while, and largely because what I mentioned I was going to be doing in my last blether a few weeks ago, that's what you'll have been watching for the last few weeks. So we're going to do a few things in this blether. I've got a little bit of viewer mail that's come in, long overdue to call that out, so we'll do that. We're then going to do a bit of an update on the milling machine spindle, and those that have been following that little series along, we'll have a bit of a discussion around that and around some of the comments that have come in and around some of the thinking that I've got going on in terms of me upgrading that spindle to ISO 30 and its current status and everything like that. So a bit of talk around that. We are going to do a little bit about upcoming projects, so nothing too major on that. I've still got obviously the mill spindle piece to finish off and the rest of the mill upgrades that I've spoken about in previous workshop blether, so I'll not go over all that again, but that's still, that's still to get finished off, as is the shaper refurb. There's quite a bit of work left in both of those projects yet, which is going to be continuing on over the next few weeks, but there is an extra one that I'm going to throw in that I've not yet spoken about, so we'll talk about that, and a final thank you. So we will move over to the mill. I'll try and do the viewer mail at the mill because my bench is just a complete disaster zone at the minute. There's bits of shaper and oily rags and tins of paint and goodness knows what else all over the place, so no room on the bench. We'll move to the mill and we'll do the viewer mail, and then we'll get on to the mill update. Okay, so we've got our viewer mail, and this is from Tom at Hilltop Machine Works, Virginia. So I've got a sticker from Tom, his channel sticker. So I think most people that watch me will already watch Tom, but if you don't, go over and check him out and give him a sub. He's got a very nice workshop, about far bigger than I've got. Got some really nice machinery in there and some very good projects on his channel, so go and check Tom's channel out. And Tom also kindly sent me a bottle cooler and a Starrett metric to Imperial conversion chart, which is always handy, and I might stick that because I dart between metric and Imperial all the time, largely because I spent my first 15 years in industry working in Imperial and second 15 years in industry working in metric. I was taught in metric at school, so completely mixed up largely in terms of what units I use, and I frequently interchange them regularly, and those that are regular viewers of my channel will have picked up on that. I can work as easily in either. That said, it's been quite some time now, probably 18 years since I worked predominantly in Imperial, and I have forgotten a lot of the fractional equivalents, so always useful to have something like this handy, and I might stick it somewhere up behind the mill, and it's just a useful reference rather than getting a book out. So thank you for that, Tom. And Tom, I owe you a sincere apology. One, that this has taken far too long to get this published, and secondly, that in doing the homework for this piece of the video, I realised as well that I had not yet subscribed to your channel. That's already been rectified. Tom, apologies for that. So, and I've been obviously missing out on your most recent videos as a result of that, so that's all fixed. I'm now subscribed and will therefore be dropping the odd comment in or two when I watch. So apologies for that, Tom, but that's just, it's been so busy here with the projects I've had on and work and everything else that just that one slipped the net, so do apologise for that. And while we're doing apologies, and that was on the board when we started, this is an apology to all of the sort of contributors to the channel who've sent stickers in and things over the last really 6 months, largely since Christmas. I think the last sticker run I did was back in December, so I've got a big long list of people that have sent stickers in to me and other things that I need to address that, and I really do need to. I know I've done this a couple of times now and kept apologising. I really do need to find the time to address all of that ever-growing list that I've got and get some stickers back out to people returning the favour. So again, to all of you that have done that, I haven't forgotten about you, and I will be sending some stuff out, and I just apologise for the length of time it's taken, just because of you know, full-time work and trying to do a video a week in the workshop and get some workshop time. There is just not a lot of time left in the week for other things, but I do need to make the time, so that's the apology. So yeah, going back again, go and check Tom out if you've not already done so. We'll get that sticker up on the board, Tom, just shortly. And with that, we are now going to move on to talk about this thing and where we're at with it. Okay, so those of you that have been following along with the mill rebuild series, the last time we touched this or looked at it, I was talking about the rack problem that I've got and being able to get the rack on my ISO 30 spindle to mesh with the pinion, and I've had no end of comments, and the last video I shot was a bit of measurement between the two racks, trying to understand what the dimensional difference was, and then a bit of a walk around the shop and talking around some options for correcting that. And I've had some really good suggestions in terms of what I could do, you know, things about actually boring the holes out that hold the pinion bigger and putting offset bushes in to move the centre backwards, and all kinds of things like, you know, cutting a new pinion from scratch, modifying one of my existing pinions. I've got a couple that I could modify one. You know, a lot of people saying, yeah, go on the shaper and recut your rack. But two comments that I've had that have really made me say, that was my plan, and those that have watched it will know my plan was to get the ISO 30 spindle rack. This is the Morse Taper 4 one, by the way, that's fitted back in here just now. Put the ISO 30 taper onto the shaper and recut the rack. And I've had a couple of comments, and one in particular from Rusty Knox, who absolutely, when he talks about anything on a shaper, I'm listening, because he's very experienced, and he said, I don't think, you know, it's probably not a smart idea to, the first job you're going to do on a brand new machine that you've never run yourself, well, it's not brand new, it's new to me, and also a machine that you've recently stripped down and rebuilt that you don't know how it's going to behave and perform, you really shouldn't cut a rack, because you're only going to get one shot at it. And he's absolutely right. So he's made me think again, and he wasn't the only one that suggested that. There were several other comments on it. So I am back to thinking differently about what we do with the ISO 30 spindle. Not yet made my mind up. I've got a few options, a few sort of different things to consider, not in any rush, as I said. So that will be upcoming in future weeks. So what we're going to do in this, as part of the Blether, a couple of people have also said, you know, now I've done the stability ring here, what difference has that actually made? So what I thought we'd do in this Blether video is we'll just chuck a DTI on somewhere onto here and just see if we can detect, you know, how much stiffer that is and whether we've got any free play in this Morse Taper 4 spindle as a result of stiffening this up with this ring. So that's what we're going to do. And then what I might also do as well, just chuck the vise on the table, put a cutter in, put a bit of material in, and take a cut that I would have taken previously with this Morse Taper 4 spindle, where I know the depths of cut that I can take with this machine before it starts making a row, and just see if we have made any difference. So we'll just chuck a bit of scrap up and give that a go, and that will be really good just to test that out. So I'll get a DTI set up and we'll come back and have a look how much of a difference we've made by putting this stiffening ring on. Okay, so you can see my setup. I've taken my drawbar out, I've put in a brand new Morse Taper 4:3 sleeve, and this is a good quality one, it's not an import one. And I've also got my ground setting bar, which has got a Morse Taper 3 back end on it, in the spindle. Now we're not using the setting bar as a setting bar in this particular case. I'm using it as a lever to be able to pull the spindle around without, you know, sticking things up here that I shouldn't be sticking up here to try and influence it. So this is probably the safest way, and I'm not pulling hard, so I'm not going to risk doing anything to this setting bar. This is just gentle movement to see what we've got going on the clock. Now, before I did this work on the spindle, putting this, milling the underside of the head and putting the stability ring on, and if you've not seen that, go back and check the videos out, I incorrectly measured my slop in the spindle by actually having the mag base on the table and the clock on the spindle. So that wasn't checking the spindle slop, that was checking the slop in the spindle, the slop in the ways that where the head joins the column, any bending moment there is in the column, any slop there is in the rest of the machine. Everything was involved in that, so it was a totally ropey reading. What I did do before I did the milling and putting the stability ring on, I did this very same check that we're about to do ahead of it. I didn't film it, unfortunately, and I was getting about 0.3 of a millimetre or 12 thou, there or thereabouts, slop in this Morse taper 4 spindle with the machine as a standard, with this exact same setup. So same clock stand, same clock, same position, test bar in the spindle. That's how much free movement I'd got. So we've got the clock set up there now. It's not the best setup, it's a bit wibbly wobbly, but for what I'm doing it's fine. So you can see we've got weight on the clock, you can see the needles moving there. It's not, as I say, it's not ideal because it's a bit wobbly, but for what we're doing it's fine. So we've got that on 0 just there, and what I'm going to do now is pull in line with the clock, just gently pulling on this Morse taper 4, on this Morse taper 4 spindle, and I'm pulling reasonably hard there, and I've got largely about 10 microns, just over, so 0.01 of a millimetre is what I'm influencing. So we've gone down from 300 microns to 10 with the work that we've done there, with the spindle fully retracted. I've got my lock undone, so my spindle's not locked, that's in a completely free state. So yeah, massive improvement in terms of actual free play and float in the spindle. So really happy with that, and again just proves the point that what we did there was a good thing to do. Just before we rip this down, I thought I'd do a slight addendum. As I said in my previous videos, I'm largely copying Stefan Gotterswinter here in terms of what he's done on his mill. Now he put a new clamping arrangement, quill clamping arrangement into his stability ring. I didn't, and I just wanted to show, because I didn't think clamping was my biggest issue. So again, you can see we've got weight on the clock. I'll just get it back somewhere near the 0 there. My spindle's currently in an unlocked position. I'll just pan out so you can see what I'm up to. So hopefully you can still see the clock. So here's my spindle lock. So we're unlocked at the minute, loose. I'm now going to lock, and if you watch the clock, so that's locked tight. That clock isn't moving at all when I'm locking that spindle up. So that quill lock is having no influence at all now on where the spindle nose is. So I'm really happy with that. I didn't think, with this stability ring in place, I really didn't think I needed to do anything with that locking mechanism. So yeah, couldn't be more happy with that. Okay, I'll strip down, get the vise on, bring you back. I'm just setting the mill back up for a bit of trial cutting. I thought it was worth showing these. Picked these up today in Lidl's. Now I've got a decent socket set. I've had it 20 years. It's a Halford's set, 25-year guarantee on it, and I do have a set of metric spanners in that socket set, but literally I keep that boxed up and away and just use it when I need it. So I don't really have any spanners in the shop for regular use. I do have a small, cheap, really horrible, nasty set. So saw these in Lidl's. So twin-ended, open-ended spanners, and also a set of cranked ring spanners, again double-ended. Yeah, Parkside, obviously not snap-on quality, but I found Parkside stuff to be pretty good in the whole, and reasonably priced. You know, not stupidly expensive. I forget how much these were, I'm not even going to guess, because if I'm honest I didn't really look. I just picked them up and chucked them in the trolley. They were a few quid each, something like that, a few pound each. So thought I'd just show those. So I'm going to find a space for those to go up on the wall somewhere. I will get on to putting the vise on the mill at some point. Bring you back in a bit. Okay, so a couple of things. I've thrown the vise on, broken all the rules I was taught really hard in my apprenticeship, and that's an easy way of saying it, that you never put a vise on a milling machine and clamp it down and not clock it. And if you ever do, you always write on it that it's not clocked and you stick a date on it. And I've just done that because in 2 weeks time, or whenever you come back to it, you may have forgotten, you stick a job in and you end up all over the place because you assume the vise is clocked in. So I've broken the rules, but I've written on the vise just for my own remember. And what we've got here is a huge T-nut that I have picked up or acquired from somewhere at some point. So a bit of mild steel, far too big for me to ever use as a T-nut, so it's just a bit of scrap stock. Can't really do anything around where this whole area is, so we're going to chuck that in the vise and largely just take some cuts across the end of the T-nut where the holes are. Now, I know with this mill previously, when I was working in steel of any sort, mild steel or whatever else it was, if I tried to take a cut deeper than 3/4 of a millimetre in steel, the machine would make a whole racket. And I am not hopeful that this, what I've done here with the quill, is going to have changed that, because what I've subsequently found out is I've got play in the column and in the head slideway that I also need to address. But we will give this a test and see if we've made any difference. Okay, so the first thing to report, I've just touched on. First thing to report is this actually mill sounds different, just through the work that I've done putting the locking ring on, which is really quite strange because I've not actually changed anything about the spindle itself, yet the mill actually sounds quieter and different, and well, we'll wait and see. So I've touched on, I'm now going to put on a 3/4 of a mil cut, so that's quarter, half, 3/4. That's a 12 mil solid carbide end mill. I know that if I tried to run that through steel prior to what I've done, as soon as I got into a full diameter cut, I would be getting lots of vibration, lots of noise through the machine. So let's see what happens. Absolutely no difference at all. So it's still making exactly the same noises that it used to, which tells me that my weakness is somewhere else. And so anyway, I'm not too concerned, because I know that what I've done here is an improvement on what we originally had. It has to be. Certainly just in terms of accuracy, you've seen the amount of slop that I've got in there now. I've got virtually nothing, so that's a lot tighter than it used to be in terms of slop, which will only make precision better. But in terms of the vibration element, no change. More head scratching. Okay, we're in at the shaper, and we're going to talk about new projects, or an upcoming project. So obviously those of you that are following the shaper rebuild will know we're a long way off the finish line yet. There's quite a bit more work to do, but as we get closer to the finish line, and those that have followed will know that when I put this on the dolly that you can see at the bottom, I put a big thick piece of marine ply in the bottom so that I can use this as a storage area for tooling and whatnot. Now this is right next to my mill, and I mean right next to my mill. You know, there's literally 12 inches, 18 inches max from the mill. So what's going to happen over time is that in there is just going to fill up with swarf and muck from the mill. Absolutely. It used to have a door on. You can see it's got these two hinges on it, and so what I plan to do as an upcoming project is make a new door for this, and we'll paint it the same colour when we're done. Never made anything like that in my life, and again, those that are long time followers of the channel will know that my welding skills, whilst slowly and slightly improving, are pretty dire, as are my fabrication skills, as are my equipment that I've got to do sheet metal work and things like that. So yeah, that's going to be a bit of an interesting challenge, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think once we've made that, that will finish off this condor stand very nicely, and it will make a very nice base for the shaper. So that's something that will be upcoming in the next, I don't know, few weeks. I may have even done another Blether video before we get to that, but that's coming up shortly. As and when we finish the shaper, I do want to get that blocked off so it's not getting full of swarf all the time from the milling machine. Okay, that gets us to the end of workshop Blether number 14. So interesting stuff on the milling machine, absolutely. I am certainly not disheartened by that, and it doesn't surprise me. I fully expected that to be the case. It's now going to be really interesting. So what I do know is that dimensionally the work that I've done has made that spindle far better. From a vibration chatter perspective, I have not seen any difference, and I've just demonstrated that. So it's going to be really interesting. So the next job now, as soon as I've fixed the rack and pinion issue with the ISO 30 spindle, we will do a very similar back-to-back test, same piece of material, same end mill, same depth of cut, and we'll go for that with the ISO 30 spindle and see if that brings any difference. And then beyond that, my next task is then to get rid of or get a different power source other than my static phase converter, and probably move to a VFD. I get an enormous amount of electrical noise into the motor, which then will, by the very nature of the noise that I get, trace through the gearbox into the spindle, translate to the cutter, translate to the workpiece, and then translate through the whole machine as vibration. So the next task after I've put the spindle in is to address the power source and to put a VFD on. And again, I shall use the same piece of material, same cutter, same depth of cut, and we're just going to keep going, and I'm going to keep chasing it back until I get to a point where I've chased out whatever is causing the vibration that I get. I suspect it's the Gibbs in the head, and I also suspect it's flex on the column. And somebody did say to me they've got somebody, I think it's one of Stefan's friends, they've got the same mill as mine, and they'd actually attached the column back to the wall to stop the flexing in the column. So I'm just going to keep going. You know, I know my spindle's good now dimensionally, so I'm just going to keep going bit by bit by bit, and we're going to chase it back and back and back until we get it to a point where I either have failed to make my import Chinese milling machine behave how I expect it to, and I know from my industrial experience I'm probably expecting too much from it as a hobby mill, but I'm pretty sure I can get it better than it is at the moment. I've seen some of the other hobby mills that are direct drive take similar size cuts without that level of vibration, so I know there is improvement scope in there for me to look at. So all good and interesting stuff, and hopefully anybody else who's got a similar machine can follow me along on that journey and see the kind of things that we do to try and chase that out and make the machine as solid as it can be for a import hobby machine in a sort of hobby workshop. So I hope that was interesting. We will be back next week, probably back onto the Shaper refurb again. Do want to get that over the line, so I will be joining you next week for that. And thank you, as I said, so the last thing on the board up there is a huge thank you I'm approaching the 3,000 subscriber mark. I never in my wildest dreams, when I started this 2 and a bit years ago, thought that I was ever going to get anywhere near that. You know, massively surprised, massively grateful to all of those of you, to my regulars who regularly comment, and to the new people that are coming along and showing an interest in the channel. So yeah, thank you very much. That for me is payback for the effort and time it takes to make these videos, and hopefully pass on some of my knowledge and some of the experiences that we have in a small home workshop. So thank you all, very much appreciated, and we'll catch you all very soon on another video when we'll be making something else.